Hi, it's Will from StormTheCastle.com, and in this case, TelescopeNerd.com also. And this is part 2 of my 3-part series on how to make a reflector telescope. And in this part, we actually make the telescope tube assembly. Sometimes it's called the optical tube assembly. So, and I'll show you how I build this and how I put it all together, how I make the different parts. Let me give you a quick review of a reflector telescope and the parts in it. So here we go, we have a diagram here. There are 4 pieces to the telescope. The tube, right? The primary mirror, which collects all the light. This is what makes the telescope possible, right? So the light comes in and bounces off of that primary mirror. And then we have the secondary mirror. The light comes in and bounces at a 90-degree angle off of that secondary mirror, right here. And then goes through the eyepiece where you look at it, and that's this right here. So those are the 4 parts of the telescope. It's pretty easy. You just have to be careful in how you build it and make sure everything lines up very nicely. And that's what I'll do. So let's launch into the tutorial on these 4 parts and how I put this telescope together. Well, before we build this telescope, let's take a quick look at the finished one. There you go. It's all done, ready to go. Works great. And my hand there just gives you an idea of the size of it. It's 4 feet long, 6 inches wide. So the first thing you do is cut yourself the tube to your right length. You know, in part 1 of this video, I showed you how to measure all of this so you know what to do and the different measurements. But this is a 6-inch piece of nice cardboard tube that I have. Now I'll show you how to build this assembly for the primary mirror, which is going to go in the bottom of the tube just like this. It's important that we have a little spring set up with this because you want to adjust that mirror so it works just right. So let's make that assembly. This is 1x8 pine, which means it's 3/4 of an inch thick. And I'm cutting 2 discs. One is the size of the mirror that we just saw, and one is just the inside size of the tube, so about 6 inches. See, that disc is going to go right inside the tube there. Inside the tube, and you'll see more about that. So you got your 2 wooden discs, you cut them out. And any tools you want to use. I use the jigsaw. And then sand them a bit. And the large disc, the 6-inch disc, is going to slide in that tube rather easily. You know, it's a snug fit, but goes in there, just like that. So trim it to size. So now let's build it. Put the discs one over the other, centered exactly. And I actually drilled the center hole and pinned it in the middle so they both stood in the middle. But drill them out a little over 1/4 of an inch because we're going to put 1/4 inch bolts in there. I think 1/16 over 1/4 of an inch is fine. 3 holes equidistant around like that. And you'll see how that setup is. And then I countersunk them. You countersink them so the flathead screws will fit snug in there. We're going to put the mirror on top of that. We don't want the screws sticking out. So see, it goes down and the screw goes down like this. All 3 of them. So put those 3 bolts in there. They're 1/4 by 3 inches long. And put nuts and washers underneath them to hold them tight. Now, we're putting some springs on these, so I bought a little packet of springs at the hardware store, cutting them down to about 1 inch, put them right over each one of those bolts. See, we're almost done here. This isn't very complicated. But a spring on each bolt, and then you can assemble this right onto the large disc. And you'll see how this ends up. I did put washers on top of those springs too. You know, everything gets washers. Both sides of the spring. So, and there we go. See, we have a nice setup there so we can adjust the mirror. To finish this off, this part of this mount, I put washers and wing nuts. The wing nuts allow you to just tighten them and adjust them. Watch. See, now we can adjust any one of those bolts and change the orientation of the mirror while it's in the telescope. That's important. So there we go. Now let's put the mirror on it. I made 3 clamps like this with a little bit of foam on them to protect them. This mirror doesn't get scratched. So just clamp that mirror down to that top plate, that top wooden disc. I drilled some pilot holes and then screwed it right down. So there you go. That mirror assembly is done. It's not that hard. There's more about this on my website. But there we go. We can put this right into the telescope now. So, mount it into the tube. Remember, you sanded it so it fits nicely.
Get it flush, get it nice and flush. So it's nice and even and flush with the back of the tube. And then drill it and screw it down. I use 4 screws, 4 wood screws with some pilot holes. Very nice. That was the hardest part. After this, a couple more things, and then we collimate the telescope. Collimating is aligning everything so it works properly. There you go, see? Nice and flush with the back, and we can adjust those screws to set the mirror. Now, we're going to do the eyepiece, some of the eyepiece here. We're not going to mount the eyepiece quite yet. Measure it out and mark it. Drill a pilot hole where your eyepiece is going to go there. You drill a pilot hole, and then you drill a large hole, large enough for your eyepiece to fit through. I forget the size of this. It's like 2 1/8 or something like that. See, now we're going to do that little angle mirror, this secondary mirror. And this, I'm just showing you here what it looks like when it's mounted. And notice that I have a bar going all the way across like that. The full length of the tube, it's like a 7-inch bar, threaded rod, 1/4 20 threaded rod. And I do it a little bit different in this video, but go with that. If you're going to make one of these, go with a bar all the way across. I'll explain a little bit more. But let's make that diagonal holder. That's called a diagonal. 7/8 inch piece of dowel, you can use 3/4 inch. Cut a 45-degree angle at it, because we need that for the mirror. Remember, the mirror bounces the light at a 90-degree angle, so we need that. Then I made this little setup with threaded rod, 1/4 20, with nuts and washers to hold it in place. And I originally did it this way with just a single rod, but it wasn't strong enough and didn't hold as well as I wanted it to, so I ended up going with the threaded rod all the way through. You'll see what I mean. And then glue the secondary mirror to it. I used Gorilla Glue, a really good glue. You don't want this thing falling off. That's an elliptical mirror, so it has to be nice and straight. The funny thing about it, if you look at it from a 45-degree angle, it's actually circular. That's what the ellipse is. But you look at it this way, it looks longer. So we drill a hole, and we mount that mirror mount right into the telescope. You got to make sure you measure it correctly so it comes out in just about the right spot. We can adjust a little bit, so it just has to be close. That's the way it's going to go in there. You know, if you want to make a telescope, just go for it. You'll figure it out. There's lots of resources on my website, telescopenerd.com. You know, it's a lot of fun. I mean, you can buy one, but I don't know. I'm making this one. I'm making a larger one too. So now that's the secondary mirror. That bounces the light off the main mirror out the tube into the eyepiece like this. So let's take a look at what that's going to look like. You want that to be centered right in the hole and in the tube. And we're going to peek, and I'll show you. See, you look in there and it's right in the center, although it doesn't seem, it's a little off. I have to adjust it. Also part of the camera perspective. And this is what it looks like in the end of the tube. Now in mine, first time I did it with just that 1/2, I ended up threading a rod all the way through. So do that for strength and stability all the way through, not just halfway, like this, all the way through. That's much, much better. And you can, thread those nuts back and forth to adjust that with the location of that is. So we're just about done. Now you can mount the eyepiece holder on there. I use 632 by 1 inch bolts with nuts and washers. Then we got to collimate this thing. This is the hardest thing. When you look down the eyepiece, everything's centered. The diagonal is in the center of the eyepiece. The mirror is in the center of the diagonal, and then the reflection of the diagonal is in the center of the mirror. Everything's lined up. To adjust it, you can adjust this part here in a lot of different directions, and you adjust these to get everything collimated. And once you got it collimated, this thing is ready to go. We can look through it. And I can't get close with the camera here, but you can see that tree. It's working terrific. I'm really happy with this telescope, how it came out. You can see the leaves on the tree way down there. The small tree there, the far one, far away. And that's it. Paint it up. Don't paint the cat. He was black. He got in the way with white paint. You're good to go. A little touch-up paint. Have some fun with it. Typically, we use white so you can see it at night. Okay, that's it. That's the completed telescope. In part 3 coming up, and I'll have a link, I will rebuild a mount so you can mount this telescope. You can't just hold it and use it. You need a mount for it. That's part 3. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. Leave a comment if you got a question, you have any ideas.